Hello and welcome to Practical Leadership Podcast, where leaders share their tools and practical advice to make you a better leader today. I'm your host, Max Kozlowski, and today we have a very special guest. We have a legend in the realty industry here in San Antonio. She has served as a chairman of the San Antonio Board of Realtors. She had a bunch of other positions as well, too many to probably name. She's been in the industry for many years, and here's what's exciting to me. She has won just about every award there is to hand out there in the industry. I actually personally think that she has won so many awards that she decided to go out and do the realty brokerage thing herself because they ran out of recognitions and awards. So Missy Stayers wanted to do her own, and now she's the owner of her brokerage firm, Missy Stayers Realty Partners. Anybody that knows her aspires to be like her. She sets the benchmark in the industry, and I'm just so excited to have you today because all of your success, Missy, is no coincidence, and it seems like you've figured out a formula to replicate it consistently. Welcome to the podcast today, Missy.
Thank you, Max. It's an honor and a pleasure, and you humble me. So thank you for the accolade. Very gracious of you.
Well, there's nothing I could say here that would do what you've accomplished justice either. So, Missy, to get us started today, just share with us something really cool, fun, good, happy, exciting that has happened in your world in the last 6 months or so.
I would say COVID was not a setback for us. It actually gave us a wee bit of time, and I do say wee bit of time, to slow down, revamp, think about what we need to do. And in doing that, that really helped us ramp up, clear down to experiencing Zoom way before many others did. And in the last 6 months, that's just kind of escalated in tools that we can use in our business to provide better business, better service to our clients. And it's becoming routine. And then it's also caused us to evaluate and look at what other things can we improve for that experience for today's world that we experienced over the last 2 years. And we've been working pretty hard on that.
So it's super interesting. I've heard people talk about how maybe COVID has benefited their business, how it might have not been so bad, but I have not heard anyone describe it like you did, right? Like your perspective was an opportunity to give yourself some time to do better and be better. And you've even described some of these things. So that mindset, Missy, where does that come from?
I think that mindset just comes from looking at any failure as failing forwards, or any opportunity as never setting you back, but how do you make it better? And I would say that my parents probably ingrained that in me. I've never seen them settle for less or not figure out how to move forwards.
I also believe that if you don't have that mindset, it's going to be difficult to be successful at anything, but even more in your industry. You're in a tough industry. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people watching here that know you, follow you, want to see what they can learn from you. But a lot of others might not know too much about the industry. But it's a tough industry where you're faced with a lot of challenges. There's rejection, deals gone wrong, things not working like they should. Did you have to strengthen that mindset and approach, or do you think that's what allowed you to be successful? How did that evolve?
I think it's both, Max. I think you have to have the right mindset to go into any downturns. And COVID actually wasn't a downturn for us as much as people said it was going to be. We just took a look at it as how do we make it work? What can we do different? And people still need to buy and sell. So really embracing technology and doing things we had never done before and weren't necessarily comfortable doing them, but oh well, just get out and do it. and you get better at it as you go, and people appreciate the fact that you're at least doing it. I also think always strategizing to look at where you can improve and how you can improve things, especially when you hit the roadblocks. Those are opportunity times versus necessarily setbacks. So how do you go over the wall, through the wall, or around the wall, but don't let the wall stop you.
So you've got to tell me more about that last bit, right? Where did you get that resolve, that determination to, go through it, around it, or just destroy it along the way?
Well, I think that comes from a lot of things. Now that I am an owner of a business, I have people depending upon me. So sitting down in a chair and go, that's it, I'm done, I'm folding up, and putting people out of work was not an option. So I think those outside sources fall into it, besides the fact that the need is still there. So not giving up. And then I still had bills to pay, bottom line. Life in real estate does not stop.
So a combination of a need and a want, right? Taking care of people, yes. and there's kind of like a need there. So when I think about practical leadership, Missy Stayers shows up in my brain very, very quickly. And I think you're going to end up sharing some really, really practical nuggets and piece of advice. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about where you first became familiarized with both the idea of leadership and where you first started to learn about leadership. I don't think a lot of people know kind of your how you grew up in this world.
I'll go back and say one thing. My parents have always been amazing leaders, but I will tell you where leadership actually kind of started for me that no one knows about is, I got to think of the name of it, but it was where I could make an application to go learn about politics. And I originally wanted to be like a page in DC and work for a congressman. And they had American Legion. There we go. Through the American Legion, my mom signed me up for a program where I went for a week and I learned with a large group of girls how to form a team. Somebody had to be a leader, somebody had to be the public speaker, and somebody had to gather together and move everybody forward, and also learn how to be persuasive. So I think that's probably some of the ground roots that most people don't know that I ever went through as a teenager. And then if you throw on top of that, I've played sports most of my life, and you have to learn to work together, but there always has to be somebody that picks everybody up.
So leadership has a little bit to do with, for you, somebody has to bring the people together. Mm-hmm. But then you said a second part, which is like somebody's got to bring everybody with them.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about this philosophy when it comes to leadership, about how do you see leadership and how do you see your role as a leader?
Leadership is a we, not an I. An I is an only place. So I think the most primary thing about it is a we. I think it is important to understand that lots of input in minds are better than one. Open-mindedness is extremely important, and everybody has different gifts, and it's learning how to put all those gifts together for the better good, which is really important. And a lot of people are too scared to step up or to fail. And I think it takes special people to say, you know what, it's okay. I can fail forwards, but somebody has to be the conductor or the director to help everybody understand where the common goal is or where we need to go.
So what do you think when you think about our audience, right? A bunch of people that are in leadership positions, aspiring to be leaders, aspiring to improve their leadership. What are some things that you see that you think they're not doing right? Right? We're generalizing a little bit, but what are some things that you see out there that you just believe people need to think about a little bit differently and do a little bit better?
I think it's really important to understand if you're going to be in a leadership role, what is the overall picture of who or what organization you're going to be a leader of? What are their goals? Where do they want to be? Where are their problems? And who are the dynamics that are part of their picture? I think it's very important to understand that, because you can't be a good leader for wherever you are unless you understand where that perspective is coming from. I also think that it's very important to understand that one doesn't get anybody there, and a leader is worthless without a we. It takes lots of people and everybody working together. I think it's very important to understand that leadership is not a dictatorship. And also to remember to, it's important to thank people, lift people up. Also make sure the right butt's in the right seat, because otherwise you stress them out and they can't do it. Or if it's a growth for them, you need somebody to grow, help give them the tools that they need, or a mentor to help them get to where you need them to be. And then also to recognize when somebody is just, that's not their skill set, and what you're asking them to do is causing more harm than good.
Wow. So that's really a lot of good stuff there. I'm going to try to see if I can summarize it a little bit. So one of the things you said is leadership is we. Nobody accomplishes anything by themselves. So your job as a leader is to put together a group of people that can then open up their minds, share their thoughts, and leverage the collective brain, right? Leverage the collective power of a group of people versus the leadership style, which is you've got, like the superhero, the super smart individual that then wants to think about everything and wants to do everything themselves. And you're saying, avoid that, build a team, get the most out of the different people, and think about leadership as a we, not an I. You talked a little bit about kind of setting the example and letting people recognize that failure is not really failure, it's a learning opportunity. That through that learning, they get to be better.
Yes.
You said something that I connect with a lot, and I want you to talk a little bit more about it. But it's this idea that it is both okay and important to recognize that someone might be good and gifted for something, but not for something else. And the sooner you as a leader recognize it, and the sooner they recognize it, the faster you can move that individual to where they really need to be successful. Mm-hmm. And that is also part of the leadership, because there's some risk involved with, admitting or not recognizing that you're not right for that position. How did you become aware of the importance of that?
I'll use my daughter for an example, because I think it's a very good example to use. She does not do conflict well. And because of that, if I put her in a place to where she's constantly having to deal with conflict, it's causing her stress. She doesn't deal with it well. And what may be a tiny little snowball turns into a mountain snowball that happens because I put her in a position that is inherently a problem for her. And it's not that she can't work on it and gradually get better. She will never be awesome at it, because it's not in her nature. And so I think it's identifying that in people and what their strengths are and where their gifts are. It's not even just strengths, it's gifts, because we all have gifts in different places. So I've learned that when it comes to that, I have to weigh what I'm going to ask her to do. And if it's a smaller dose of conflict, much better than constantly being in a larger dose of it, because then it's just going to cause problems all the way around.
The idea is you could be the right person for the organization, but you also have to match that with being in the correct position.
Correct.
Where you can use your natural gifts and work on your strengths and not consistently be having to fight and overcome your weaknesses.
Yes.
So that is your approach. Have you always seen things like that, or did something ever happen that you're like, now I get it, I can't do that anymore?
No, I haven't always seen things like that. I've even had to work on that same issue with myself on certain things. And it's really just becoming self-aware or identifying that. And then also realize that we are happiest and do best where we have those gifts and strengths. And it's not that we can't grow, but it's very dependent upon the person if that is something they want to grow in and are comfortable with the conflict of growing, or if it's not. And so I think that's important to look at too, because we may want, but do they want? And we may look at a position and go, does this position need this or does it not? And then it may be a rearranging of the seats. And no, it took a lot of conflict for me to learn that.
Well, it sometimes takes a while to take those important lessons, but I think it's one of those difficult leadership skills that needs to be learned, because you're dealing with humans and their emotions, and
Yes.
there's like a duality between you can't do that, or you can't do that naturally, or it's not your best fit. And sometimes me wanting to prove people wrong, or me wanting to say, well, yes, I can if I want to, and just kind of becoming very pragmatic in that approach and saying, why bother, right? Why bother? There's one just little thing that I'd love to add to that conversation, because one of the things that I found is that sometimes people are not in the right place. They want to stay and grow because it seems to be the right thing to do, right? I should want to be able to grow and evolve. And then I ask the question, why? And what I've realized is that sometimes there's not a very powerful why behind the reason they want to stay.
Yes.
And that has made all the difference in getting down to that why, because then they can become aware of, do I want it just because it's what everybody else wants? Or do I want it because that's how I really see myself and the person that I want to become? Or is it just because that position comes with bigger pay, more money, or more recognition, more something? And once you can get through that, I think you can kind of find that next level on that. So getting people, the right people in the right spot, recognizing that they could kind of be a good fit, because you're talking about your own daughter, right? So it's like they're a fit culturally, but now we've got to figure out the fit in the position. Then we move on to a overarching big mindset and approach that you just shared with us, which is, let's make sure we have a common vision with common goals, that we recognize you use the word problems, the challenges, the constraints, and the dynamics of where we're at, so we can collectively work through it.
Correct.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts surrounding that framework.
Well, I think in any business, everyone has a direction of where they want to be, or what the purpose is. And I think it's important to break that down. I think it's also important to identify what are the key components of the values. Do people live up to those values? Because one bad apple that does not have those same values is a problem and will cause problems. And you can't move forwards. It's a thorn in the side when you experience that. So I think it's important to identify them, understand them, and know them, and then you fit to that because you have a better chance of leading with a common goal, people having the same mindset towards a common goal, and then performing towards it just as well.
You know, I have so many questions. So I know we're going to be limited on time, so I'm going to jump to a question that I think everybody here wants to hear, which is, what do you think is your secret to success? Right? How have you accomplished, record performances year over year, continuous growth, becoming an independent broker? What's the trick? What's the secret?
If I have to pick some things out of the air for you, I think structure is important. Having a plan and having structure is very important. And I've learned that even more so over the last few years. Having that is actually what gives you the ability to start scaling because it calms the chaos. So I think that's extremely important. I think it's also to be passionate about what you do and how you do it. And that passion needs to reverberate through everyone that you work with, and they need to understand that. And then I think it's really important to understand how you make people feel makes all the difference in the world.
So how you make people feel. I gotta share something with the audience on that one.
Oh no.
Well, and I'm sorry I have to share this secret, but I think it's too important for the world not to know it. And here's the secret. I don't know anyone else in this world that has the ability that you have to make people feel like you are there for them, that you are present, that you've got all the time in the world for whatever they need, like you can. And what was interesting to me is that I felt like that whenever we interacted, but then I realized that you really didn't have that much time. So what I realized is that we would talk, we would be in our meeting, we would have our conversation, and when it was done, you literally ran out. People, Missy literally runs. Okay, even if she's on high heels, she runs. But when you're with her, you feel like she has all the time in the world, and that there's nothing in the world that's more important than you at that moment. I learned a few things from you, Missy, and I've actually taught those to a bunch of other people. But I think if anything, one of the big things that anyone can learn from you is that ability, that presence. And I love how you know how sometimes it's like cool to be busy, right? It's cool to have to be running around and doing things. For you, it's like it's just what I do. It's not cool. And I actually don't want you to feel rushed when we're having a conversation and interacting. So when you talk about how you make people feel, that is how you've made me feel and other people that I know that you've interacted with. Is that kind of by design, or is that kind of what your beliefs are about how you have to be around people?
That's just how my beliefs are. I think something that was ingrained into me early in my career is I would talk to someone, and this is about the time all of these things came out, and they'd be like this, and they'd be and they weren't listening, and they were busy doing something else or anything else. And I thought, I never want somebody to feel like that. If they're giving me their time and I'm giving them my time, then that is where my focus needs to be. My brain may have thousands of things going on in it, and it does. But the most important thing at that moment is the person that's right in front of me, because that is a gifted moment. It is a piece of time that you can't get back, and it needs to be important. So you need to focus on them. And so I do that intentionally, because nothing is worse than to be with someone and you're like, well, why are we even talking? Because you're not listening.
Super valuable and ever more important in our times. I'm curious, is this part of your training? Is this part of what you do with your agents?
I think they understand very well that it is important to take care of who they're with and give them the time and respect that. And yes, we do teach that.
Yeah, I'm sure you have dozens of things that you teach, because if you are thinking about how to replicate the success that you've had and what you've done, I can only imagine the success that people around you are going to continue to have. And you lead by example, because from what I understand, you're still out there, right? You're still looking at properties, showing properties, working on them. Why do you think that is important to you? Because you could sit back, you could let other people kind of run the show. Why do you think it's important for you to stay engaged and involved with
that? And I do a little less of it now, but I also feel it's extremely important for me to be able to know what's going on. I do genuinely love to help people. So I would have withdrawal from that, to say the least. But I also think it's important to understand, it definitely helps in the fact that someone can't say, oh, well, you don't understand. Oh, no, I do. I understand very well. So you can't tell me it can't happen, can't be. I do what you do every day.
So you're kind of in there in the trenches with them and experiencing what they can experience.
Yes.
Which I interpret as it gives you the opportunity to relate with them better.
Yes.
And really recognize the challenges that they face, and kind of use your own creativity and skills to overcome some of these challenges. Because I think part of that creativity that you bring has a little bit to do with your mindset, has a little bit to do with creativity and your approach to life, which is looking at the opportunities in whatever is in front. So it sounds like being in there with them allows you to see the opportunities as well. And when others might be worried about all those phone calls and all that activity that needs to be done to be successful in the industry, you're saying it can be done, and here are some things to think about. Here are some ways that you could do it too.
Correct.
Great. So Missy, let's talk a little bit about how you actually do it. So we talked a little bit about the vision. We talked about setting some goals. How do you prepare to be successful? And then how do you maintain that intention throughout a year?
I have definitely, and I'll come back to structure. Structure is really important, extremely important. And I still fail at it sometimes. I have an underlining structure, but there are things I'm still working on today in my daily schedule that I'm trying to change in myself. But I think understanding what your structure needs to be is extremely important. We do that over the years. I never used to write a business plan until I opened my own brokerage. I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I had a system in place, but I never really wrote a business plan until I opened my own brokerage. And so I think writing a very simple business plan that doesn't have to do with numbers. I think knowing what your number wants to be is important, But if you can't build the pillars or the footwork of how do you get to that number means nothing. And so I think it's really important to identify how do you get to that number versus concentrating so much on, and I'll give you an example in real estate. Let's say I want to sell $3 million worth of real estate. Okay, great. We break that down and you can crunch it by whatever you're selling. And that means you're going to have to work, 40 buyers, 52 sellers, or however that number breaks down. And that's the extent of most people's business plan. Well, great. There's no actionable items there except for I need to do, 40 some buyers and 52 sellers. So breaking down, okay, so how do I get to what's my plan for the sellers? What's my plan for the buyers? And then breaking that down, and then breaking that down further into what we call sprints. That is actually a step-by-step. This is how I do this pillar. And that is amazing because it keeps you on track. You can, there was a term a long time ago that Max used with me. It's called a KPI. And I'm like, what the heck is a KPI? And it did not resonate until now.
Took a little while, but
yes, it took a little while. But through the sprint, I can gauge and give that time and figure out where I need to tweak things and see what the return is on that. And with anything that you do, you have to give it time. We are all so impatient in this world, and we want instantaneous gratification. Well, luck comes instantaneous gratification, but behind luck, there's got to be some structure and some thought processes that go to it. And we do that annually. We review it typically weekly. We build our sprint log on top of it, and that's all of our projects, not just our business pillars, but that's our projects that we want to use to enhance our business. And that helps us stay focused and also helps us stay on track. It's a really good feeling for those of us that like checklists to say completed and move to the bottom. It's a good feeling. But it also means when you look back at the end of the year and go, holy cow, I did a whole lot of stuff. This is awesome. It's done. So we work on that and we stick to that. It may get changed some, but rarely. We typically stick pretty close to it.
Okay, so that was awesome. That's a lot of good content there. So I'm going to kind of try to see if I can summarize what you've said a little bit. Number one is structure, right? We as humans need structure, and yes. I think you need to have structure in the organization, and you want to have the right type of structure. So you want to have a simple plan, and you need to understand the pillars of how you're going to be able to accomplish the plan. In other words, don't just have numbers for the sake of having numbers. And it's not enough to break down the numbers and slice them out without having activity behind them. So ultimately, you get very clear about the activity that needs to get done, and you track that. And as that adds on, you are able to accomplish the outcomes that you're looking for. So it's never just stuff, and it's never just numbers. It is very concrete activity that gets connected and associated with that. And it sounds like you want to make sure that you have a lot of intention behind what you're doing. So yes. I heard you say, hey, you're not just doing stuff, but you know what you're trying to get out of whatever we are doing. And therefore, we can be patient and not expect everything to just magically work out. But in doing, things will magically work out, right? As you said it, you will be lucky if you're doing what you're supposed to. So yes. there's some thoughts there. Technically, review weekly, right? Like make sure you're staying on top of that activity weekly. Don't let too much time go between sprints. That way, everybody knows what needs to be done, the activity, and you're keeping up with how much of that activity got done. So then you can provide feedback and help and support with that. And then you said one of my favorite things, which is you can't just work on your job, right? You've got to work on making the organization better. And you're not only reviewing the day-to-day work that will lead to the success of tomorrow, but you're working on the project that will make the organization or your life or your career better in the longer term as well. So how do you think being a business owner and being the steward of all these people's lives has changed you from being a top performer broker with a team to now being the head of a team, like of all these individuals?
I think, well, I can tell you something I did this year that was very different. And that is to also understand what their goals are individually. And that from family to work to income to vacations to whatever's important to them, to also have them do the same thing I do. And then we review those. Where are you on your goals and on the things that you want to accomplish in your personal plan? So that in the end, if I am able to achieve what we need for the company and they are able to achieve along the way what they need in their life, then we all win. And again, it goes back to a we, because we're all in this together to get to someplace, and not everybody's places is the same, but understanding wherever that place is, let's work together so you can get there and I can get there.
So you're looking to align the goals of the individual with the goals of the organization, and I love the philosophy of, we only win if we can achieve both, because
Yes.
if one has to suffer for the other, then that's not like the full definition of success. This is excellent. Missy, is there a very specific tool, system, or process that you use that our audience can take and just, hey, go do this tomorrow? If there's something that you use or something that you would tell them to go just do this tomorrow, what would that be?
I would say two things. One is we have a pretty simple business plan that basically breaks down 4 pillars. I have learned that if you try to add more than 4, you typically fail at the rest of them, or your strongest 4 suffer from it. And I'm the worst at trying to do that. And then building your sprint. I think that helps. Both of those are very important things to building your structure. And then I would also say, going back and saying, your 5 F's, which I think is faith, family, fun,
Finances,
and there's another one, and I can't think of it at the moment, but also building that out right along with that plan, because those are important things to incorporate in.
Okay, so you've got to know what you want as an individual, and you help them break it down into 4 categories. Did you say 4 or 5 categories?
4, because really, if you do more than 4, you'll fail at something.
Okay, so that's not the 5th F then.
No, I'll have the faith,
Okay.
family, friends, fun, and finances. There we go.
There, friends.
Faith, family, friends, fun, and finances. There we go.
Excellent. So the idea is sit down with your team members and make sure that they are clear and that you are clear about what they want with their 4 F's, right? That kind of helps you really understand.
5 F's, and then there are 4 pillars of how they want to grow.
Okay, the 4 pillars, and then be very clear about what those 4 pillars are. Tell us a little bit about the pillars. What does it mean, and how do you develop that?
So 4 pillars are, you can use it towards growth, or however. In my business, our 4 pillars are, how are we going to achieve more business, and those are our foundation pieces. And you experienced one of those, so I'll just use this for an example. So Where we are intentionally looking for more business this year is from our sphere of influence. So that's one of our 4 pillars. Then we take the sprint and we build down, how are we going to engage our sphere of influence to bring more business to us from them. And we build that whole plan out. And then it's very important, and I think this is important that I haven't said before, it's very important to put dates on things. Because if you put a date to something, you have accountability. If you don't date things, then it may be the end of the year before you touch it. So it's extremely important to put dates for accountability and when you're trying to achieve things. And so we went and took our sphere of influence, broke it down of how we're going to attack it, what we're going to do, and then we've already got that whole plan in motion for the year. And what's really great about that is in the day-to-day of being in the business versus always on the business, I don't have to worry about getting it done. We're going to look at it. We have our whole plan together. We might have to tweak something on something, but it's there, it's done. I'm not struggling with working and still trying to figure out how to do that.
Got it. So in other language terms, they sound something that could be, it could be your rocks, if you're familiar with the concept of rocks, or you could consider them your priorities, perhaps.
Yes,
like they could be your priorities. They could be your short-term thrusts, how you're going to get there, your initiatives. But it's basically saying there's only a few big things that are going to really make the difference that you want to make in your business.
Correct. What are your areas of concentration?
Yeah, and make sure you're focused, concentrated, clear about what those areas are, what you're going to be getting out of them, and what you're actually going to be doing and implementing.
Correct.
So you bring it down to the level of execution and you keep track of how much did we do? What did it do for us? Who's accountable for it?
Right.
Excellent. So that's kind of Missy's framework for getting things done and being able to stay focused. One of the biggest challenge I see with entrepreneurs and owners is they want to do more than what can be managed well, executed well. And it's kind of one of those things where the more innovative, creative you are, then the more things you can think of. So I love that you've developed, adapted a concept that makes sense for you and it works for you. Saying we start out the year with that clarity and focus. We develop those plans, we execute those plans. And now Missy's brain doesn't have to be going crazy with looking at opportunities. She can focus on the execution. She can focus on getting things done.
And the opportunities go on my agile list. That's my project list. So every time I have that little aha, which happens with us serial entrepreneurs, is it goes on that list. It'll get looked at and either stay on it or taken off.
What a great piece of advice, right? We never want to stop that creative mind from coming up with ideas and seeing opportunities. We just have to be careful of where it's presented and when it's presented.
Correct.
Right? Because it could potentially be distracting as well. So with the framework that you shared, how does somebody know if what they have is good, if it's correct, if it's the right thing, and if it's working? How would somebody know if they're set up to be successful, and how do they know if what they have is working or if it's not working?
You have to learn how you're going to track it. You have to ask yourself, how am I going to evaluate this at the end of the year? Was it successful or not? That's also part of the developing of it is, how do I know that this worked? And you have to ask yourself that question and then be able to answer that when you're done.
So part of the process is actually asking the question, how do we know if this is working?
Yes.
Right. How can we keep track of that? Okay. So what are some things that you've learned in the process of implementing this that others could learn from? Because like any other system or process, it probably requires a little bit of skill to get right. So what are some of the common mistakes people make that prevent them from being successful with an approach like this?
Adding too many pillars, too many areas of concentration. Definitely have learned that. Not putting dates on things, because if you don't have a date on it, it may take all year to get to it, and that's too late. And then also not breaking down who or what is going to accomplish it. Because if there's other people that need to do it, then you need to be able to say, this person's going to be accountable for it. It's going to be due by this date. And then also not breaking down the steps of how you make that happen. The beautiful thing that I think I've learned and am still learning, the most important thing that you can do is to break those steps down. And it may seem a little painful in the front side, but if you break all the steps down, then it becomes an item that you can delegate as well. Or if somebody's out sick, somebody can pick it up and run with it because you have that framework. And that repeatable framework is extremely important.
So bring these projects down to the activity level. So
Yes.
you can say, did it get done? Yes or no? And there can be people that are accountable to making sure that things are getting done.
Correct.
Okay. So there's just so many more questions that I have and so much more that I would like to pick your brain, but I know we're running out of time. So I'm going to do my best to try to summarize things. And for our audience, you can visit practicalleadership.com, practicalleadership.com with one L. You can watch this and other podcasts with great leaders, and you're going to be able to also download some notes and a template out of this conversation that you can go and implement in your business starting tomorrow, right? So visit practicalleadership.com, download the document, download the template, and get to work on becoming a better leader today. So Missy, to summarize a few things, the mindset has to start with the we. Leadership is a we game, not an I game. The team has to believe in failing forward and recognizing that there are learnings along the way, and it is okay to learn, and it is okay to fail. Part of your mindset is there are no roadblocks. You've got to figure out a way to get through them, around them, jump over them, but you've got to see them as opportunities, just like you did with COVID, where you said this was an opportunity for us to get better. You've got to look at those issues and challenges to get better. You also mentioned leading by example and getting in there in the trenches with your team, so you can use your creative genius and expertise and mindset to see the opportunities that others might not be able to see, because that powerful mindset focused on solutions and opportunities is something that you can consistently bring to the table. Leverage the collective brain. You got to make sure you open up those brains and that you get the most out of people and what they have to say and what they have to share, because a collective brain will always be smarter than any individual brain. Make sure there are common goals, that there's clear vision, that there are clear goals. Make sure that those goals are not just numbers that get broken down, but rather they are connected with very clear activity, very clear intentions, and that there's very clear ways of tracking that activity with deadlines. So nothing gets through the cracks, very high level of accountability, and you can make significant progress. Make sure you've got the right people on the position. Focus on their gifts, not what they have to overcome. Trying to get them to overcome their weaknesses is frustrating and not the most profitable for anyone, right? You need structure, you need plan, you need passion. You've got to make people feel a certain way. And everybody that you work with understands and recognizes. If they work with you, they recognize that you make them feel a certain way, and everybody knows that they need to make other people feel a certain way. You talked about caring about people and what they want. You see, we covered a lot, Missy. You gotta get clear about people want. A good breakdown is their faith, family, fun, finance, and friends. They got to be clear about what winning looks like to them, what success looks like to them, and it has to be aligned with the organization. That's the only way to winning on both the business side and the personal side. Let's see. I think I've covered some of that. Review weekly, review often, redefine those sprints, work on the projects, not just the job. And I think that's it, right? You got to make sure you know what those pillars are. Don't overdo it. You've got to be able to remain focused. You got to be able to remain productive. You got to be able to track it. Did I miss anything, Missy, that you want to share?
No, I think you summarized it beautifully.
Wow. So talk about practicality, right? That's a lot of very specific things that people need to be aware of and people need to do. So thank you so much for sharing that. To kind of get us to a close for today, what is something that is going to be happening in the next few weeks, months, that you are very excited about and that you'd like to share with us?
I am moving to a new building, which super excited about because I will own it. And we are getting ready to do a new brand rollout that is more in line with exactly who we are. And we took a big in-depth look and review with outside help at who we are, what we are well known for, and how do we really convey, as they tell it, the best kept secret. So I'm excited about what the future has to hold.
Excellent. So new building, owned by the company, and new messaging for the world that better suited, better connected with who you guys are and what people know about you, to help you continue to scale, continue to grow. How many agents are you up to now?
I currently have 20 agents, and my team, I have 5 members on my team.
Are you open to more agents?
Yes, we sure are. We don't take everybody. So you have to be aligned with our values and you have to be passionate about what you do.
So if somebody listening wants to learn more about your team, your organization, where could they go find you guys?
We have a careers page or a tab on our website, mstagersrealtypartners.com, or you can always just shoot an email to info@msrpsa.com. I'll be the one to get it and we'll answer right away.
Thank you so much. So you could visit Missy's website. Don't forget to visit practicalleadership.com, download a summary, download a template, watch some of the other podcasts, subscribe, like, share, all those good things. And really importantly for us, who do you think needs to be in this podcast next? Who would you like me to interview, and who would you like to hear some of their secrets from? Let us know. That'll be very helpful for us as well. Missy, any final thoughts for our audience today?
Be productive. Take care of today. Take care of tomorrow when it gets here. And you can't change yesterday. So fail forwards.
That is brilliance directly from Missy. Thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to talk to you again soon.